are in Meiser Kabbanis. There's so many wonderful things we have to study. Yeah, let's see here. We're going to talk about Malika. There's two types of Malika. You know that? That was interesting to learn. Oh, yeah, I'd mentioned before that that idea of the Banish Mashos and how they were building the walls around the temple. They were building the walls around the city of Jerusalem in times of Nehemiah. Nehemiah was leading the whole thing. It says they did that from dawn to from Alos, which is dawn, to Tzesa Kochavim. Now that's not building the Beis Hamikdash per se. That's the Beis Hamikdash was already standing for many years before Nehemiah even showed up. Rambam uses this expression saying that we involve ourselves with building the temple from basically dawn to dusk, but actually Tzesa Kochavim till nightfall, from dawn to nightfall, which is longer than from Zricha to sunrise until sunset. So why of all halachas, I was trying to explain that for certain halachas we stop at sunset, and certain things you could do until, like building Binyan Beis Hamikdash, he says until Tzesa Kochavim. And we're offering there that the reason for this distinction is that with regards to work, physical work, like the Vilna Gaon says, when do we consider the later Tzesa Kochavim? By the way, that one time in Tanakh when it's talking about Tzesa Kochavim, it's talking about the second one. What do I mean by first and second? There's a halachic Tzesa Kochavim, which is the way the Rambam and the Vilna Gaon Paskin is 3/4 of a mile walk, a mil, basically a kilometer, Roman mile, a kilometer, 3/4 of a kilometer walk from sunset, and then 3 stars come out. That's about 18 minutes or so. Until the Tzesa Kochavim of the Tanakh, of Sefer Nehemiah, that's analogous to dawn. Dawn is well before sunrise. How long is dawn before sunrise? About 4 mil walk, let's say. 72 minutes. That's the general opinion. If it takes 18 minutes to walk 1 mil, so it takes 72 minutes to walk 4 mil. Let's just work with the Rambam's opinion. So dawn is 72 minutes before sunrise, basically. So too, nightfall is 72 minutes after sunset, because the sun, the way it casts its light on onto the sky and all that, it's not that 72 minutes before the sunrise there's already the break of dawn, and half an hour before sunrise it's significantly light out, but on the tail end, once the sun sets, it gets darker much faster. No, it takes about 72 minutes for the light to become full, and it takes about 72 minutes for all the light to go away. So what's this Tzesa Kochavim, which is only 3/4 of a mile walk after sunset? That's a halachic construct. The one the sages discuss when, for example, when you're supposed to say Kriyas Shema, when Shabbos is out, when the Kohen becomes pure after going to the mikveh the previous day, Hariv Shemesh, that's what it refers to. And that's how the Vilna Gaon explains this. That's what the Mishneh Berurah points out. Either you hold there's 2 sunsets, like Rabbeinu Tam, or you hold there's 2 tzeses. So this second tzeis that the Rambam says, until which you could involve yourself with building the Beis Hamikdash, that's not the halachic tzeis he's referring to throughout the rest of his book. 3 times he mentions Tzesa Kochavim. He mentions in Hilchot Shabbos. He mentions it in Truma, where he talks about Hariv Shemesh, and he mentions it in Hilchos Kriyas Shema. He says when you have to say Kriyas Shema at night, and he also mentions in Hilchos Tefillah, saying if you daven Marav after sunset, just remember you have to daven Kriyas Shema. You have to say Kriyas Shema after Tzeis. There are different times. So this Tzeis that's mentioned here is not the one that we normally use for halacha. By here I mean in Hilchos Beis Bechira. That's referring to the tzeis, like the Vilna Gaon says. What is the second tzeis? The tzeis that's 72 minutes after sunset. On a normal day, a person can only get productive when there's daylight, right? They don't have electrical lights like we have here. So let's say just traveling. A person needs to travel by daylight, so he could really just start getting on his way at dawn, when the light starts turning on in the morning, and he'll try to get in a few miles walk before sunrise. Like Lot, for example. It says, Lot left Sodom uchmo hashachar Allah, at the break of dawn, at alos hashachar, and Hashemesh yatzal haaretz v'lo bat zoara. And when the sun came out upon the land at sunrise, that's when Lot made it to Tzoar. So Lot basically walked from dusk from dawn until sunrise. That's mentioned Sefer Bereshis. Takes 72 minutes to walk the 4 kilometers that Lot did with his daughters and the angels who were accompanying him. So too, they spent that time building the Beis Hamikdash, just like a person could travel during that time. And a person who's trying to travel, this is the resolution of the Gemara Pesachim, as brought by the Mishneh Berurah in the name of the Gra. If a person were traveling all day and trying to maximize his travel time, so even after sunset, he'll continue for another 4 miles until it's completely dark out. That's the final tzeis. But for halacha, tzeis HaKochavim is very shortly after sundown. 18 minutes after sundown, that's when the halachas kick in. That's when you can say Shabbos is over. You don't have to wait, like Rabbeinu Tam, 72 minutes after sunset in order to let out Shabbos. Yes, you can be machmir. The Shulchan Aruch was machmir for that. The Ramah was also machmir. But we are not. And historically speaking, they only kept like the Rabbeinu Tam for, 900 years or so. They used to hold not like Rabbeinu Tam, and then they held like Rabbeinu Tam, and then they went back to holding like the Gaonim. Okay, only 900 years or so. And my point is that, so when the Rambam mentions that they build the Beis Hamikdash also, why is this halach important? Because you build the Beis Hamikdash when you can be productive. Mm-hmm. It's not a ritual law, this Tzeis HaKochavim, and that's why it's not connected to all the times the Rambam mentions Tzeis or Shkia as the cutoff point. With regards to the actual temple service, like we read here in the 4th perek of Ma'aser Korbanos, he talks about the korban becoming invalidated with sunset. That's a strict halacha. Normally, strict halacha matters. The line between individual days is Shkia. Shkia is the cutoff point, except for those dinim when we hold of tzeis. The Rambam's very exact. So too, the child born after Shkia. The basic rule is, any day of the week, a child born after Shkia, his bris will be the next day. Let's say he's born at the end of Thursday, after Shkia. He's born in, you say it's Banish Mashos, so he's a suffix. It doesn't matter that he's a suffix necessarily. The Rambam mentions that he's born during Banish Mashos, so his bris will be next week Friday. It's as though he's born on Friday. Why does the Rambam mention Banish Mashos? Because if he's born on Shabbos, then you have a problem. If he's born on Friday, Banish Mashos, as Shabbos is coming in, you can't say, well, he'll have his bris on day 8, which will be Shabbos. We'll assume he's after Shabbos because he's born during the suffix time. For Hilchot Shabbos, we do hold of Banish Mashos as a suffix, and because this is are we going to be Mechal Shabbos for this child? We have to say that Miman of Shach, either was born Friday, so he should have been brised on Friday, and he brised on Shabbos just mean it's a day late. But we can't do that out of suffix. We can't violate Shabbos out of suffix. Any bris that's not exactly on the 8th day cannot be performed on Shabbos. We say, well, maybe he's born on Shabbos. It's still a suffix if he's born on Shabbos, which would be his 8th day. So he has to get brised on, in practice, Sunday morning. That's why the Rambam brings this up, not because the Rambam holds of Banish Mashos to being a suffix all the time. It means for Hilchot Shabbos, anything involving Hilchot Shabbos, we hold that the time between Shkia and Banish Mashos is a suffix. But during the week, really, it doesn't really matter. Okay, during the rest of the week, that is. Okay, a child born as Shabbos is ending during Banish Mashos, his bris will be Sunday morning. If he was born on Shabbos, it started suffix, so he can't bris him on Shabbos. If he was born on Sundays, so Sunday's day 8, not day 9, so that works. Okay, that was the point of what we're saying here. So sum it up. In the Beis Hamikdash, the cutoff point for the Korbanos was Shkia. If the Korban was slaughtered during the day and the Kohanim didn't get to perform the blood service before the sunset, the blood has been disqualified. That disqualifies everything, and that's what we read here. Bayom v'lo balayla. Lefichach ein shochatim zvachim ela bayom. Ve'ein zorkim damam ela b'yom hashchita. We can only slaughter the sacrifices by day, and we only throw the blood the day that the animal is slaughtered. Shneimar b'yom akrivo et zivcho. The day he brings his zevach, the day he bringing hakriv is putting the pieces of the korban on the altar, whether to burn or put the blood on the altar, and zivcho means that which has been slaughtered. So you have to do the act of offering the animal on the altar the day it's slaughtered. B'yom hazvicha tiyakrava, the day of the zvicha, that's when you have to do the hakrava. V'chevan sheshaka achama nifsa adam. Once the sun sets, that's it. Now I pointed out, if the Rambam really held that Banish Mashos is a suffix, then because it's doraisa, suffix doraisa l'chumra, what you should do is, if the Rambam really held of the suffix of Banish Mashos after Shkia, in this particular case, he should have said, if the animal was slaughtered today, and then the sun set, so you should still throw the blood misafik. Play it safe. But the answer is no. They knew in the Beis Hamikdash they're very exact. Shkia is the line. Only with regards to Shabbos, Hariv Shemesh, and Kriyas Shema is, do we bring in the concept of Seisa Kochavim? There's no suffix in the Beis Hamikdash. Once the sun sets, that's it. They know the day's over. Okay, now we're in the second halacha, the fourth parak. I'll take a drink for a minute. I find these halachas fascinating. When they build the Beis Hamikdash, we have to have a Sanhedrin. Who will be part of the Sanhedrin? The answer is whoever goes and does it. When they start the Sanhedrin, it'll be whoever's there. By the way, present at the temple. I have an inkling who's going to be in the beginning of the Sanhedrin. There are many great Talmidei Chachamim who attend the Temple Mount on a regular basis, and they try already to be there all the time. And they're going to form a Sanhedrin. When they get the chance to stay there, they're going to be the ones who are there, and they're going to be deciding the questions by default. Remember, part of the principle of our Torah is that being there is attendance is half the battle. You first have to show up. If you choose not to show up, you don't count. So it was like that with, by the way, King David. Why does it say God chose certain people? Really, anybody could have stepped in. Anybody could have been Abraham. It's alluded to. God was basically looking for who's going to step up, who's going to be the chosen one. And it's alluded to, we saw in the Psukim, Yoktan was the first candidate. He's of the descendants of Shem. He has 12 sons. His name is prophetic in this regard. He's a son of Aver, but for whatever reason, God passed over him. Eliav, King David's older brother, he was rejected. He could have come. He had his chance, but he could have stepped in. So Aaron was chosen for the priesthood. At the time, the priesthood was quite egalitarian. Any family could have a priest as long as you have a firstborn son. You yourself are not a firstborn, so you're not going to work at God's altar. But if you play your cards right and also ask for a little divine assistance, you'll make sure that first child will be a boy and he'll be a Kohen. Right? That's the way it used to be. And then the whole Chet Egel thing happened and changed the plans. Now, who's going to step up? Aaron stepped up. His whole tribe basically stepped up. The whole tribe stepped up, got a promotion. And among his tribal people, he also stepped up even more. So he got it. He earned it for everybody else. That's what it means to be chosen. So we also hold that whoever's going to step up is going to do it. The ones who stay in the land of Israel. Then if you take yourself out of the picture, you're out of the picture. So the ones who are there will form the Sanhedrin, and they'll be accepted, and they're going to be de facto running the place because they're the ones who are there. Okay. Kol HaKorbanot. Oh, we read this halacha. Let's read the second halacha. Kol shekaravu mati rav bayom, ma'alinot hamizbeach kol halayla. By the way, Laila in this case is referring to, what is this? Matirav means the blood. Karavu matirav. The blood was already applied to the altar, so now you could burn the limbs, the extra limbs that they didn't have a chance. Remember, the Mizbeach is limited space. There's a lot of korbanos on a busy day. They're going to do the night shift, Hekter Chalavim and Evarim. They're going to take the extra piece of korbanos and burn them all night. Their quantum are going to be on night duty. So that's what it's talking about. Makrivin kol laila. They put in Ma'alin Mizbeach kol laila. They're burning them on the altar and bring them up to the altar all night long. And by the way, this Hekter Chalavim, Lila here is an exact, as we've seen in previous halachas. If they finish the temple service sometime after Plag, even before sunset, then they begin the Hekter Chalavim, which is Rabbi Yehuda's basis for the idea that, technically speaking, the time for Mariv starts at Plag every single day of the year. And the sages agree, according to the way Rambam understood the sugya, at least, and the Rif understood the sugya, that especially on Erev Shabbos and Erev Yontif, everyone agrees Hekter Chalavim, the night shift, Mariv, started at Plag, and they would basically try to finish before Shabbos came in. These slaughtered sacrifices, their blood had been applied to the altar during the day. Maktirin emurihem balayla. So they're emurim, the insides. Those can be burned on the Mizbeach all night. Ad she'aleh mudashachar, until when? Dawn. The break of dawn. Lechein evarei ha'oloth. Oh, I'm using this edition of Machon Mamre with the dots. I don't like that. What do you have here? Evarei. He has an Evarei.
Evarei.
Yeah. Okay. This is one of those things. I have Evarei in Korean. It's Zerei Shavat Zerei Evarei. Yeah. Okay. And he has an Evarei with a patach, which is kind of weird because you don't have a patach before usually a reish, an unaccented syllable with a patach before a reish. Reish can't get a dagesh. So it should be either Shiva Na or Kamatz. Okay, so this is already the Machon Mamre has his own Yemenite sort of sheet of how to vowelize. That, by the way, it has rhyme and reason to it, but it does not fit with, let's say, Masoretic Hebrew, the way our Bibles are done. It's a different way entirely. Okay, Maktrinothon balayla an shela amud shachar. So the limbs of the oloth, the burnt offerings, they can be burned all night until dawn. And in order to make sure that no one makes a negligent mistake, that is, no, they're continually burning you after dawn, like all the things, Rabbi Gamliel's rule, what is it? The sages said that make sure to get this mitzvah done by midnight. Rabbi Gamliel's rule. You have all night until dawn to say Kriyat Shema, and Rabbi Gamliel told his sons, just to know this rule. When you have a mitzvah due at night, you have until Chatzos. But if you missed it, that b'diavad, you missed it, you could still go all night. You should have done it until Chatzos, but you think that you missed your opportunity to say Kriyat Shema, you really didn't. Okay? It's just a harchaka. I don't mean to say that just. It's just saying that's how it goes. However, one of the things Rabbi Gamliel didn't say in that first Mishnah was what? My sons, just to know, anytime you have a mitzvah to do at night, you can only do it after tzeis, not just after shkia. That would have been a good rule because nowadays, since basically times of Rashi and on, we see that every generation they add a new halacha that that the threshold for the time for this mitzvah begins when tzeis. This is a long-running issue I've had, trying to show everybody that one of the first things that they said was, eating Korban Pesach and eating matzah, that's after tzeis. And reading the Megillah at night, that's after tzeis. And any time a fast is over, after tzeis. Even though the Rambam points out that Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av end at tzeis, the other fast days end at Shkia. And a whole slew of other halachas, everything is suddenly, the line is at tzeis because it's a night mitzvah. If that was such a hard and fast rule, it should have just been said by Rabbi Gamliel there when he's talking about the fact that Kriyat Shema starts at tzeis. He should have told them, and by the way, any mitzvah you do at night is from tzeis and on. But he never said such a thing. And you'll never find such a thing in Shas. You know why? Because if you study, objectively speaking, from the beginning, you'll find that there's only 3 dinim that have to do with tzeis, and everything else has to do with shkia. But whatever. The argument from silence is a very hard one to convince people because then you have to show them every source. But you could do this, get yourself a Bar-Hayim, you'll see. And Rabbi Gamliel should have said this. It was such a clear rule. The sages should have just said it. I think it was the Pri Chadash or whatever. Well, we'll see this when the Purim rolls around. They'll show you a very important tshuva also. Even though it is permissible to burn these emurim and avarim, the leftover piece of the korban, at night, what do you have here? Ma'acharino tan ladat. Shouldn't push it off. You shouldn't make it late just because I have extra time. So Ella, I have, and here it says Ela instead of Ella with a segol and a dot and a lamed. Okay. Mishtablin laktir kakol bayom. We try to burn everything on the altar during the day. Chaviva. Oh man, I have chaviva here. I've said it says chabiva with a regular patach and a dagesh in the bed. Chaviva mitzvah b'sha'ata. And also, and here it says the thing he says sha'ata, 3 comments instead of b'sha'ata or sha'ata, whatever it is. It's hard. It's really throwing me off. And he'll switch to the non-dotted version. It's better to do a mitzvah during its time. Sharei hektar emurim ve'evarim. There's burning of the leftover limbs and fats. Afal pishik sheira ksherim balayla. I should stop reading here. Even though it's kosher at night, dochina shabbat mizmanam ve'in machrino tan l'motzei shabbat. You can't. It's better for them to be done on actual Shabbos and not wait for Motzei Shabbos. Extra limbs were offered. Really, on Shabbos, how many korbanos were there? It's just 4 lambs on Shabbos. You're not allowed to bring voluntary korbanos at Shabbos. No, it means that Shabbos was, I guess, the first day of Sukkot. First day of Sukkot, there's a lot of korbanos or whatever it is, and people bring olos riyah and chagigas and stuff, which they do bring because it's the holiday. So in that case, there was a lot. So on that particular Shabbos, they would make sure to still burn all the extras. They wouldn't say let's wait until Motzei Shabbos for the extras. We try to get as much as we can on Shabbos itself. Please stay with us for a minute, and we'll switch this version of Mishneh Torah for those viewing at home. Base Medrash, guys. Okay. It's fun to be a youngster, you know? Never see it before? Come to the base matters, take a drink, take a snack, make a little noise, we'll walk out. Okay.
It happens
There,
too often.
there's a story they tell in the name of Rabbi Mordechai Yahu after the 6-Day War. So the liberation of Hebron and Maras Machpelah. So the Waqf guys handed over the keys to whichever Jews, Rav Gorin and the army people, and of course then they didn't bother raising their heads. They were completely surrendered, and we totally blew it. Either way, so one of these functionaries, these Muslim functionaries, saw Rabbi Mordechai Yahu visiting in Hebron shortly after the war, and the Muslim guy says, "Look at this! You come in Maras Machpelah. Your soldiers are walking around the place and making a mess and acting totally disrespectful. Isn't this supposed to be a holy place for you too? Why are they doing here? Why are they just walking around and trampling all the place and getting blood and everything? Why are they like this? Where's the respect?" So Rabbi Mordechai told him, "Lama Dover Dome." There was a guy who had an audience with the king. Had to dress all well proper, walk in there and speak very on that. And suddenly some child ran into the room, the throne room, and it was all messy. He was muddy. He had a lollipop and everything. And he jumped on the king's lap. He did all this thing. It really totally messed the decorum, and also it wasn't proper. And then the kid left. And the fellow asked, "Your Majesty, I don't get it. Well, we're supposed to be all proper. You just let this child come in here and make a whole balagan. Where's the Kvod Malchus here?" He says, "If there was any kid that would have been a problem. But that's my son. He's king. He's the next king, and I love him. My son, you get away with all that stuff right now. He's just a 4-year-old." So Rav Mordechai Yo said, "V'shavu vanim ligvulam." Those are God's children. Yeah, they're just 19-year-old soldiers right now. They don't understand where they're standing. Maybe some of them were even born, after the Jews. Many of them were born after the Jews were expelled from Hebron in the 1920s. So shavu vanim ligvulam. They're the real balabayit here. So God's okay with them, making a little bit of a mess, even if this is a holy place. Okay. I don't know how that story even made it into comic books. So apparently it's true. Yeah. Let's continue over here. We're in the 4th halacha. Ooh, there's some notes here. Okay. Mentioned mibo hashemesh and mevo hashemesh. Kol davar sheino karev ela bayom. Kagon hakometz v'alvona v'aktoris. What are these talking about? Things that can only be brought during the day. The kometz is the part of the mincha that the kohen picks up with his 3 fingers. Okay, and the frankincense. See, that's the lavona. Frankincense. Aktores. That's the incense on the golden altar. The burned, the menachos that are entirely burned. The chol minchat kohen lo teachel kalil toktar. It says that any mincha brought by a kohen is to be burned entirely. The rest of the menachos that regular people bring are eaten by the kohanim as bread. 5 different types of ways, or whatever it is, to make them into matzah and eat them. But the mincha brought by a kohen is entirely burned. That's what it's referring to here. Mutar lakrivam im mevo hashemesh. What do you have there? I should have kept the dots here. I have mevo hashemesh. Okay, that means right before. Okay, you could burn them on the altar right before sunset. Even though you put them on there, obviously, if you put something into the fire, it takes a few minutes for it to be entirely consumed in the fire. But as long as you placed it there before sunset, it can continue being burned after sunset, just like pieces of the ola can be burned after sunset. Now, where they get this expression from? The Brisa, I think in Menachos says mibo hashemesh, okay? And they said, wait, you could burn them on from mibo hashemesh, from when the sun sets. It sounds like originally as from sunset on. That's a little strange, but no, I don't have to put it there. And then they answer the kasha and use the same phrase to mean before sunset. And the Gemara corrects it to imbo hashemesh, because if you read it the way that the first girsa, mibo hashemesh, from when the sun sets, it's actually gets a loch. You have to put it there before sunset. So the Gemara says no, it's im bo hashemesh, which Rashi says is right before sunset. That's what Rashi says. Im bo hashemesh means like im samach le bias shemesh, which is also called shkia. Okay, so you put it on there right before, and I have here im bo hashemesh. Im bo hashemesh. That's the Girson Argamaras. So it must be Rambam had im mevo hashemesh with mevo hashemesh. Bo hashemesh is just a simple It's not a noun. Bo hashemesh. It's a verb. Bo. It's a present tense singular verb of the kal form with a vav in the middle of the shoresh. Mavo hashemesh is the smichut of the word mavo. Mavo is a noun created by adding a mem to the shoresh, like mikdash from the shoresh. It's the mifal form of the. It's the mifal mishkal, the mishkal of mifal. It's not a binyan because it's not a verb. So when you have the ayin vav, that is the middle letter of the shoresh is a vav. So instead of having chirik, shiva, kamatz like mikdash and mishmar, and of course if you have funny letters like guttural letters, it's patach patach like maaseh, and if a hey at the end you have a segol. In this case, when you have words of that shoresh, that type with the vav in the middle, so the bem gets kamatz, and the vav is cholam in the middle. So it's makom, mavo, maoz, matzor. They're all the same. They're all the same mishkal, and mishkal is in the same mishkal as that. Mishkal itself is a word in that mishkal. Okay, so mevo hashemesh is apparently the Rambam's gears instead of im bo hashemesh. It's mevo hashemesh, the mavo or im mavo hashemesh with the setting of the sun. Just a grammatical thing, like the different gears of the Gemara. The point is that everybody agrees. Rashi and Rambam have it slightly differently, but they all mean before sunset, as opposed to the initial reading of the Gemara, which was problematic that after sunset. No, it means before sunset. The libations offered with a slaughtered korban are only brought on the mizbeach when? During the daytime. Shneimar u'niskechem u'shalmechem ma kish nisachim l'shlamim. So it connects the libations to the shlamim. Niskechem and shalmechem. Shlamim is the peace offerings. It's a korban. Ma shlamim bayom af nisachim bayom. Just like the shlamim is only slaughtered and offered during the day, put on the mizbeach, so too the libations with that shlamim. Aval nisachim ba'im b'fnei atzman. Let's say you just had a person donate a bottle of wine to the temple. Just a nesach, not one that accompanies, not minchas nesachim that accompanies a meat korban. Mitkadshim balayla ukrevim balayla. So they can be sanctified by night and offered at night. What is mitkadshim? What is the act of sanctification of this wine? Okay, there it's sanctified, and then it's offered on the altar. The answer is it's put into a kli sharis. Okay, it can't just be poured from your, let's say, Rami Levy bottle, or this one over here, which is a different brand. They're all made by the same place, by the way, usually. So you have to put it into a temple vessel. That's the kiddush aspect. By the way, it's kind of funny. Always putting the wine into a vessel, that's called kiddush. So we do kiddush. We pour into a cup that's designated for kiddush that we rinsed inside and out beforehand. Kos shel bracha. So too, you have this concept. Chazal showed us that the libation is first put into a sacred vessel, and then it can be poured on the altar. That's what it means here. In nizdamnu lo nisachim haba'im b'fnei asman. So if a person has nisachim, libations that are offered on their own for whatever reason, they don't accompany some sort of animal sacrifice, makdishan makrivom balayla. So he sanctifies them and offers them at night, puts them into the vessel. And dawn is what apostles it. If he was sitting in there in the sacred cup and no kohen went up and brought it into the altar and poured it on the altar, the place where into that bowl where the nesachim go, so now it's been disqualified. Just like any other, let's say, burnt offering that was supposed to be burned overnight, all the pieces of, let's say it was a really busy day in the base of Mikdash, and there was still leftover pieces of korbanos that were not burned overnight. So that's it. They can't go on the mizbeach anymore. They're completely puzzled. Okay. Kol hayom kasher l'spicha, v'l'shchita, v'limlika, v'l'haktara, v'hagasha, v'l'hazaya, v'l'tnufa. Let's go through all these acts. All day long, you could perform smicha. We said that was leaning on the korban. And we said that involves confession. No matter, anybody who sinned needs to confess, even if he can't physically lean on his korban because it's a mincha. It's a bird. You can't do smicha on bird korbanos, even though a lot of times there's sin offerings are birds. So he doesn't do it. Or public sacrifices don't have smicha. But we saw that every sin requires some sort of confession, and every smicha has some sort of confession. And if it's an olah, for whatever reason. So you confess the mitzvahs you didn't do. Bittul say, and if it's shlamim, you say words of praise to God. Thank you for this. A korban toda doesn't come with a confession; it comes with a thank you. Okay, shchita, that's ritual slaughter. Malika, that's using the nail of the thumb. Is it the thumb even? We'll see that soon. But it means instead of a shchita normally is whether of animal or beast or bird. That means using a very smooth knife to cut through the neck and cut the simanim. The simanim are the windpipe and the food pipe, not necessarily the blood pipe. Most animals have a lot of pipes in the neck, including humans. What goes through the neck? Let's just say, because we're going to talk about shchita. There's the food pipe, the windpipe, the blood going up from the heart, and the blood going back down to the heart, the aorta, the main blood vessels. Okay, let's see, we said the food pipe, the windpipe, the blood pipes, and the spinal cord. Okay, the spinal cord is usually contained within the vertebrae. Yeah. So that's the thing that you usually don't cut with a shchita knife. If you're trying to go to cut a spinal cord with a shchita knife, good luck, you're going to ruin your shchita knife. And the shchita knife, by force, I don't mean by actual force. You can't use force when you're shchita because that's hagrama. That'll passel the animal. That'll make it a treifa. Okay, right? Oh, sorry, I'll make it a nevela. Right? If you slaughter wrong, your animal's not kosher. Yes. It's not a kosher shchita. And then you could have a kosher shchita, but you find that it has a trephus inside, like some sort of disease or whatever. So it's not kosher, but at least it's not contaminated like this. Anyways, so you're supposed to cut through the windpipe and the food pipe. Animals have it, people have it, behemoths have it. You don't necessarily have to cut through the blood pipes, but they get cut anyways. That's why shchita is very bloody. Okay, so that's what we see here. Malika means instead of using a knife, usually on the side that's where the vertebrae are not. Right? When you want to slaughter an animal, any animal, the way to avoid getting your shchita knife stuck in the vertebrae is to go from the bottom, the part of the neck that's more fleshy as opposed to bony, right? But Malika dafka do the other side. You're not using a knife. You're puncturing in the back of the neck where all the vertebrae are. And even though, yes, birds don't exactly have gigantic, massive vertebrae, let's say like bulls do. You see a chicken neck, right? Full of little bones. So imagine you're doing chicken malika, you can imagine, but malika is only done on basically pigeon and turtle doves. But still, it's much harder. There's no knife. You're not moving it side to side. You have to use force, push in. So malika is harder. Well, haktara. Haktara means burning things on the altar. Hagasha means bringing things ceremoniously to the altar. The process of bringing it to the altar. Hazaya is sprinkling the blood. Tenufa is waving. You said it was a waving. It means take whatever it is that needs to be waved, up and down, forward and back. Temitza. Temitza is taking the part in the hands and the fingers like this of the mincha. Ula korbana musafim, and bringing a musaf also. All these things have to be done by day and all day. So a musaf, technically speaking, they used to do between the two tmidim, but you have technically all day to do it also, if for whatever reason. Just like davening musaf, usually davening musaf right after shacharis, but for whatever reason you have to delay musaf and you didn't get to it. It's reasonable that some people sometimes daven musaf late in the afternoon, right? The chol ela kasher la'aktir emurin ve'evarim. All night is kosher for burning these leftover limbs and fats. Zaklal. Davar it says emurin ve'evarim. Chazal say hektar chalavim and evarim. Chalavim is limbs and fats. Limbs is evarim. So the emurim are usually the fats also. Those are the inner fats. So Chazal call them more chalavim, and here Rambam's using emurim. Same thing. Zaklal. Davar shemitzvato bayom kasher kol yom. Anything that needs to be done by day, it's kosher all day. Davar shemitzvato balayla. Anything because the commandment is specifically at night, so you have all night. Dafal pichein. However, there's reason makdim the mitzvahs. That's better like everything else. Try to do it as soon as possible, ASAP. Okay, we'll have to plug the computer in soon. Don't worry about it. We're doing fine. Let's see this next thing. Halacha Zayin. Any note here? Oh yeah, this is an important one. This is a good one. Not going to find this in the back in the appendix what the shear is. Why? We'll see. All of these zevachs, you don't slaughter them lechavchila, means from the onset. Ela b'sakin miklei shareth. It has to be a temple knife that's a klei shares. I guess most people don't bring their knife unless they're dedicating it to the temple then and there. And by the way, temple knives is a problem. What do you do with it when you don't resharpen them afterwards? You just put them in geniza afterwards.
Oh.
There was a place within the ulam, it means the anteroom of the second temple, where they just were storing all the old knives that they used. And by the way, knives, they didn't have stainless steel in the olden days. So knives went bad much quicker. So they had to sharpen them. At home, if you had a knife or you have a sword. So you're always sharpening your knife, you're trying to keep it good. They had steel, they didn't have stainless steel. By the way, there's a whole method to sharpen. You know how to sharpen a knife? You ever done it? There's ways to hone a knife. Apparently, if you just take a rock, the proper sharpening rock, and you scrape your knife against it, that they call that honing. They don't say that's sharpening. Why? Because you're not strong enough, you're not doing it right, that you're really removing, you're just knocking the metal into the right shape, but you're not removing a new layer of metal to expose new sharpness. If you had it rotating in a flywheel super fast, and you're holding against it and shooting sparks, that's sharpening. What we do at home when you sharpen it on the steel, that's the sparks don't fly. You're not really losing parts of it. You're removing more from the steel than you are from by steel I mean STEELE, the sharpening stone, than you are from the steel STEAL. No, it's also thing STEEL. Okay, STEAL is Geneva, theft. Okay, yeah, not Geniza. So it's not really the thing. Either way, in the base of Mikdash, they didn't even sharpen the knives; they would just postle them. If you used anything they use for normal shtita, krumit shel kaneh. What's krumit shel kaneh? You ever see bamboo? You could take off the outer layers of bamboo sometimes. The bamboo is nice and dry. This outer layer is quite sharp. I know I got some in my hand before. The splinters from it was pretty bad. Okay, right in my palm. So you could technically, by the way, the Ram mentions this also regards to Mila. You need a really smooth knife, smooth cutting surface. So he says you could use a krumit, this outer layer of wood. You can use glass, sharp glass. You could use a steel knife, we call it barzel. It says really the minhag is to use nice sharpened steel for Mila. That's the best. But technically speaking, Mila and Shchita are kosher for Chulin. That means what you do in a regular outside the temple. So you could use anything that cuts well. Any zevach where the Kohen didn't receive enough in the cup of the blood, that's enough to sprinkle. No nit kadesh adam. Really, he should try going for all the blood, but the blood doesn't get sanctified unless he has enough to sprinkle there. How much is enough to sprinkle? Enough to sprinkle. It's not a revius. It's not whatever. It's not. It's basically not. Let's say a revius or a log or whatever it is, or two reviuses. It's enough that he could actually do the act. And they say when we're going to talk about some korbanos, the Kohen doesn't just spill the blood or splash the blood. Some korbanos he spills the blood on the base. Sometimes he splashes it on the corner. And sometimes he actually dips his fingers in it and applies it. So in those cases, the enough blood, not that he could just touch the blood, but he has to be able to dip his fingers in it and be able to apply. So it depends on the korban. There's a what?
Question about the use of the knife. If the knife should be one from the temple.
Yeah.
When you donate a knife, the thing that makes it a knife of the temple is its first use, is that?
Technically, no.
No?
That's its kiddush. When it's used, that's when it's first sanctified as a temple vessel. But to become property of the temple, it's when a person declares, this is property of the temple. Or I hereby dedicate this knife to the temple.
So he can bring the knife, say,
I'm dedicating this, yeah.
And then
the gizbar should also take possession of it. They say like, where's your knife? It's like, I am dedicating this knife to the temple. It's now a temple knife. Okay, I'm going to use it first. See, sometimes, I don't know if the Kohanim would say, let every Tom, Dick, and Harry bring his own, every Rachmiel, Moshe, and Yaakov bring his own knife to the temple. Necessarily, they might want to check the knives beforehand. So maybe there's a thing, just like we said, a person can donate wood to the temple. Right? But he can't say, I brought my wood to burn my korban. You could donate wood to the temple, but you can't say my wood for my korban. You could do it with your animals, like this is my animal, this is my korban, this is my flour, this is my wine, this is my korban. But you can't do that, let's say, with, like I said, wood. So imagine that if you tried to donate vessels, and say, this is a sacred vessel, we're going to use it today. The Kohanim might want to look over the vessel and see, is it up to standard before you donate it to the temple? Yeah. all these good questions. You should know that what the Rambam says here is subject to machlokas, by the way. A sakin miklei sharis. Good notes here. Das Rambam lechatchila yesh lishchot b'kli sharet uv'diavad efshar lishchot gam b'krumit she'ina kli klal. That's what Rambam says. You should use a kli sharet, but technically speaking, you bring your own piece of reed that's super sharp, the outer layer of the bamboo. That could also work. Das Tosfos, they say, tzarich lishchot dafka b'kli. You have to use a kli. Kli, by the way, means it was built by human hands. So wood, sharpened wood, might count. If a wood has to have a base kibble though, in order to be a kli. But capacity. Shute clay eights. If it's just a flat piece of wood, even if it's sharp, it's not a kli. It doesn't receive tuma. Wooden items are only considered kalim once they have capacity, beit kibul. So they have to be rounded bottom or something, or you have to take the bamboo and cut it so that it could receive water. If it's just a pipe, regular bamboo, natural bamboo, is just a pipe. So it doesn't hold water because you pour water in, it'll just flow right out. But if you cut bamboo in half and put it on its side, now it's like a long trough. I grow bamboo, so I use it for stuff around the house. The things in which we hang curtains around the house and shower curtains and window curtains, look around, I made them from bamboo. And on every sukkah, you always have to add certain things to support the schach. So I have pieces they use every year. And then there's always the new ones. I go to the bamboo area, cut out new bamboo, use it. It's very fun. It gets the kids excited, and then take just extra piece of bamboo to decorate the sukkah. One of the other things to do is if you're using flappy walls, so you don't want the walls to flap. So what you do is you put piece of bamboo vertically and on the side so that the walls can't flap. So I like playing with bamboo. So go figure. Anyways, you could build stuff out of bamboo also. So it's a fun thing to use. But here, Rambam's saying it has to be a kli. And kasva tosva shel chachilot tzarich liot kli sharei. Some say no, it has to be dafka a kli shareis. Okay, whatever works. Here it says das Rama fil yesh shiur shel hazaya achas b'shakabel adam hadami kadesh v'korban kasher. Enough blood for one sprinkling, one act of sprinkling. According to Rashi and Tosfos, tzarich sheyeh badam shiur kol hazayot sheyesh lazot meoto korban. You need enough to do all the lechatchila hazayot that you were supposed to do. Some korbanos take 2 sprinklings or multiple sprinklings. So Ram says at least 1 sprinkling, and Rashi Tosfos say no, you're supposed to catch as many sprinklings as you need. Okay, and if there's less, if you didn't catch enough enough blood in the cup, you're the kohen, you didn't catch enough of the cup for lichatchila, all the sprinklings that should lichatchila be done, then the blood has not been sanctified. Go catch some more blood. By the way, what does catching the blood mean? The second they slaughter the animal, it spurts, right? Comes out with force because there's blood pressure and the heart is still beating. So the heart still make the blood come out. This is true with any animal. And once things like enough blood comes out, or if the heart is stopped, then the blood just comes out afterwards. Like that's called like tomsis. It just comes out afterwards. So when you catch the blood, you have to make sure to get the blood that comes out with the life that's still alive, which is a significant amount, by the way, but it's not all the blood. So some blood already is puzzle. Okay, make sense? Good. Let's charge the charges here. Just put this here. I'll do it. Where's the edge? Closed here. Right there. Yeah, very good. These necks are amazing. Okay. You want some crackers? What? Okay, no, they have about 5 more boxes where those came from.
Wow.
Yeah. Those crackers over there are kosher for Pesach. They're like experimental crackers.
Weird.
Yeah, they're citrusy. I think they're made of extreme kidneys, like cornstarch and potato starch and all that. Okay. Buyer beware, or eater beware. So what happens? Ketzadu osef. So how does he do this? In order to catch enough blood, ocheza simanim biado. He feels around the animal in its neck. He finds the simanim. The simanim we said are the windpipe and the food pipe. So if you know how to slaughter, you'll know how to make it that the windpipe and the food pipe are right accessible just below the skin in the place he wants. He pulls them there. People who know, physicians know this also. There's a way to do it. There was a hockey player who was slaughtered literally a few years ago. This is good because it has to do with Hilchot. There was a hockey player, NHL goalie, who took a skate to the neck. Like the guy came crashing into it. Like he got shechted right in the middle of the game, and it stopped play. Obviously, like there's a lot of blood on the ice, and he only realized, like, oh my god, I've been shechted. Quickly ran off, and the trainer rescued his life by somehow reaching into his wound and sealing up the blood pipe that was losing blood rapidly. So he stayed conscious, and they were able to close him up. Because if you want, normally when you want to stop the bleeding, the problem is if you stop the bleeding at that point completely, then either you're cutting off blood going to the head, or not letting the blood go back to the heart. You'll kill the guy anyways. You have to somehow close the hole in the pipe so that the blood can continue flowing up and down or whichever direction it needs to do, but it's not coming out the side. And he survived, and he's totally fine now. You heard about this? This is a case of a person basically he survived such a thing. Okay, so you have to know physically. A person who knows the animal physiology well enough knows how to make the animals simanim. The windpipe and the food pipe are available for the slaughter. And then he takes them out into the mizrak. Mizrak is the sacred vessel in which he's catching the blood. Okay, he's basically holding them already bulging into this. Don't get too scared. And then he slaughters shnayim or rov shnayim, which means makes the incision through the food pipe and the windpipe, at least rov. Really, ideally, you should cut the windpipe and food pipe completely. That's a proper shchita. If just rov of them, how do you know it's rov? Because look, when you're cutting through something that's circular, it's a pipe, so you have to make sure to cut through most of it. So he gets through at least rov of the simanim. Now the animal's considered slaughter. Kedei shit kabel hadam kulo bakli, and he wants to make sure that he gets all the blood that's going to come out right away into the vessel. Everybody should study ritual slaughter. It's a mitzvah to know. A Talmud Chacham doesn't rely on others. He knows how to ritually slaughter and how to write stam, Sifrei Torah, etc., and how to perform milah. At least once in your life, you should, Okay. And umagbia sakin lamala, he should lift up the knife like that. Kedei shelo yired adam me'aleha ela min hatzavar. Gets the knife out of the way. The blood shouldn't go from knife into the cup. It should only come from the neck. Only the blood that's on the neck should come out. The dam shabasakin mikancho bisfar mizrach. The blood that ends up on the knife, he should wipe on the outside of the mizrach. He shouldn't get it in there. Mizrach echad kesef. A mizrach is a special cup. What's the shorish of mizrach? It's also a mishkal of mifal. It means from the word zorek. So it's a cup meant for throwing blood. Okay, as opposed to just a plain old kos. But whatever, it could be different shapes. I wondered if they had a contest seeing which artisan produced the best cups for the temple. The point of these cups is, unlike, let's say, this cup and any other cup with which we drink, like it says on Pesach, what was special about the blood cups? They were conical at the bottom, so that a Kohen couldn't just put it down so it would spill. You have to keep it in your hand. If there's no way to let it sit, then automatically spilling cup. Okay, let's see here. What are we up to here? Oh boy, yeah. Sorry about that. Okay, we'll get through it. Avir hakli, hareo kli, the space within the kli, the air of the kli. Mm-hmm. So that's like the kli, the ma'inaf kamino. So let's say here. Normally, I'm pouring a liquid into my cup. The liquid hits the bottom and it raises the level of the liquid into the cup. Let's say the bloods were somehow be stuck here, suspended right in the middle of the cup. This is the avir hakli. Once the blood's already in this part of the cup, within the cup, but not resting on the surface of the cup, the bottom surface of the cup, so it's considered part of the cup, right? That's basically what it's saying here. Hayam kabel hadam. Somehow, the bottom of the cup is gone. Okay? As he's catching the blood, the cup breaks in his hands. It no longer has a bottom. It can't hold a liquid anymore. So that's once the blood gets to where it's supposed to at the bottom and start filling the cup, instead it's just coming out the bottom. Someone came and took a laser and punctured the cup as I'm catching the blood. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what happens? And it did this before the blood got into the cup. So the blood's like here falling in above the cup. When the puncture happens, so the blood was never within the kli. Here the blood is about to drop into the kli. A split second, suddenly there's a hole at the bottom of the kli. So the kli doesn't exist. And now the blood will not be sanctified by getting into this area of the cup. Shavir she'ein sofa lenuach eno kimunach. If it's in the air in a way that it's never going to land, because it won't land, it'll just go straight through the bottom of the cup. So it's not considered munach as being caught in the cup. But if the cup does have a bottom, once the blood's already here, within the air of the cup, it is miskadesh. They have a similar halach, which by the way, in Hilchot Shabbos, they talk about someone throwing something through a rishus to rishus. So it's throwing it through rishus yachid. Rishus rabim, technically ends 10 tefachim above the ground. All right, rishus rabim. The air of rishus rabim is not a rishus rabim; it's a makom patur. If you could somehow levitate things, or use magnetic fields or strings to suspend something in the air, so it's not considered a hanacha there. If I threw something from the house into the rishus yachid, from rishus yachid to rishus rabim, I'm only chayav once the football is considered in rishus rabim as being landed. But there's some rishuyos that just passing through the air, it's like kimunah. It's in the air. A rishus yachid does have, above 10 tefachim. Like in my house, this is part of rishus yachid up here. Mm-hmm. This isn't a different rishus, even though it's well more than 10 tefachim from the ground. So something that's passing through. By the way, this is just generally speaking. It's a lot more complicated than I'm presenting it now. I'm just trying to say there is this idea in Hilchot Shabbos that certain things passing through the air are considered there, because that whatever it is, that area is considered, even the airspace is considered part of, as though whatever's there is landed in that space. Mm-hmm. It's just another example thereof. Okay, let's see here. Koz vachim tzarich ha'oved shetiyeh machshavto l'shem hazevach l'shem be'alav. This is a very interesting halacha. The person who's doing the service, the kohen, and the guy, I guess, doing the slaughtering. The kohen's doing the avodah that's from the slaughter on. The kohen catches the blood. The kohen has to bring the blood to the altar. The kohen applies the blood to the altar, right? That's the avodah. And the slaughter is what the kohen does, or someone else. The Baal Korban could choose to do the slaughter also. Mm-hmm. Regular people can do the slaughtering. It says that the thoughts have to be l'shem hazevach l'shem ba'alav. They have to have in mind what korban is being offered. My nafkamina is an olah, is a chatas, is an asham, is it shlamim? What is it? And on whose behalf is this being done? Who's the Baal Abayis? Well, who's the Baal Korban in this case? Who's the owner? So they have to have that. That's an essential, at least from the outset, requirement of thought, or kavanah, like we say in our modern rabbinic Hebrew. So it says bishat zvicha, bishat kabbalat adam. The times I mentioned, time of slaughtering. That means the guy who's doing the slaughtering has to have the right intentions. Not everybody knows how to slaughter, but if you hire a friend, the shochet, to come with you to the temple to slaughter your shlamim, he has to know this is for Yankel and this is his shlamim. Okay, that's what he has to have in mind. Uvishat kabbalat adam. When the kohen's catching the blood, he has to have the right intentions. Uvishat holachat adam. When the kohen is walking the blood to the altar, he has to have the right intentions. Uvishat zrikato al mizbeach. And when he's throwing the blood on the altar, he has to have this in mind also. Shnemar uvsar zevach tudat shlamav. And the meat of the zevach, that's the slaughtered sacrifice of his Thanksgiving peace offering. Most Thanksgiving offerings are a form of peace offering. Shetiyeh zvicha im shar avodot ha'arba. The slaughtering, that's the zvicha also. Zvicha is a ritual slaughter in the temple, along with the other 4 avodas, should be for the sake of this shlamim, the shlamav. V'chein shar korbanot, and so too with every other korban. Not the pasuk was talking about the shlamim, but it's the same thing is true with regards to the burnt offering and the sin offering. Wim shachat u'avad shar avodot stam. Let's say stam. It didn't nothing against what he's supposed to do, but he had already decided he's bringing a shlamim to the temple. So when he slaughtered it, it's obvious that he completing what he had already thought about. He already said this is supposed to be a shlamim before. Wasn't thinking about whether at that point whether it's a burnt offering or shlamim. They're like opposites. It's still kosher and it worked. By the way, they used to have this thing in the matzah factory. They keep having people say the shem matzah's mitzvah. We're doing this for the sake of mitzvah. I have to keep saying it. Minadin. If a person is Jewish and he's making matzah before Passover, he's trying to do it right. He has tam da'as that he's trying to do this for the mitzvah of eating matzah. Otherwise, he wouldn't be doing it. And so too, when you do a mitzvah, it used to be let's say in the Rishonim times and the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, when you put on tefillin, you say the bracha of tefillin, we assume that your intention is to perform the commandment of laying tefillin. And when the same thing you put on your tzitzis in the morning, we assume that your intention was to put on your tzitzis. Later, Kabbalists added the idea that you say mentioned like the kavanas to what you have to do. Obviously, such thing is not required by halacha. It's actually a surprise. You become bar mitzvah. I don't know. Did you go through this? We got a nice new article sitter. This blue leathery covered. It was fake leather, but it was a blue soft cover article sitter. My mother liked it so much she bought one for all my friends at my bar mitzvah. Like instead of a bencher, we'll give out a bencher at the bar mitzvah. We'll give out these pocket size. It doesn't really fit in the pocket. I wish I could say it was basically as big as this. It was blue. It was an article Hebrew English weekday sitter. It was great. And it had all the hidden muchanim zumans and shem yichud kutubrichus. Minhag Ashkenaz, right? It's not new stuff as far. It's minhag Ashkenaz. So you think as a bar mitzvah boy, so you put on your tefillin, you have to say all those things. You have to say all the pregame before you put on the tefillin, and before this, they say rastech lilu, you wrap your tefillin around your middle finger. Where'd that come from? That's a shlah. It postdates the Shulchan Aruch by many years. So it turns out you don't have to say all these things. But you can read it, and then Archibald prints more Shem Yuchid Muchas and in the Muchadim Zumans, and that's now it's minhag. Who doesn't say them before counting Omer? I was surprised in the yeshivas they start singing in Omer. They start singing the whole song. Hin and Muchadim Zuman. Do you do that for any other mitzvah? Okay, so now people do it. Okay, so that's called making facts on the ground by putting into the sitter. Suddenly everybody thinks it's minhag, but it's certainly not, and not necessary. So what are the other machshavas a person should have? What else is he thinking? Machshava is like kavana. Okay, kavana is an Aramaic root, and machshava is a Hebrew word. Meleches machsheves is intentional, calculated labor is forbidden on Shabbos. When he's slaughtering the burnt offering, it has to be for the sake of 6 things. L'shem hazevach, like this is an olah. L'shem hazoveach, the person who's the Baal Korban. And who's he giving it to? He's giving it to the Lord. Blessed is he. Vishayaktiro la ishim. Not yaktiru, it's yaktiro. He will burn it in the sacred fires. Okay? Isha is a fire offering. Okay? It has to be burned on the altar. Vishahaktarato l'reach bilvad. And it's only to produce a smell. We're not actually feeding God. And also, by the way, reach nichoach. This is saying let's read the next thing. It's supposed to make a fragrant smell as it burns. And this smell is the nachas ruach. That's what God wants, so to speak. His like Chazal Darshan, like is brought by Unkelos, and Rashi brings this rightly in Vayikra. What's a reach nichoach? God's will has been done. He is satisfied with the fact that, remember, God wants obedience. Rachmana libabai. Like we said this week's Parsha, what did God want? He gave us commandments. He wants us to keep those commandments. That is the intention. If he didn't have all this complicated machshava, stam, doing a korban like God commanded, so it's still kosher. A person slaughters a chatas and an asham, sin offerings and guilt offerings. An olah is not brought because a person committed a sin. So when you have a chatas and asham, the person did commit a sin of some sort or suffix sin. He has to also have in mind, and this chatas or asham is to atone for the sin that had been done, whatever it may be. Now look at this. Let's look over here. What's reach nichoach? Do you have in your first of all, you look throughout the Torah before you get to Shas, let's say, you say reach nichoach is a construct, a reach that is nichoach, a good smell, a fragrant aroma, which by the way is a very strong anthropomorphism. God doesn't smell a korban and say, smells good. Throughout the Torah, starting from the beginning with Noach, reach nichoach means God accepted the sacrifice with favor. Reach nichoach is an expression, like we said last week, there's other expressions for God accepting korban. Nirtza lo lechaper love. Nirtza, Kippur, Zikaron. Those are all less anthropomorphic. Nirtza means it's pleased God, it's been accepted. Kippur means it's atoned for the sin. Zikaron has been remembered. Yale Zichronenu. It's Az Karatala Hashem. The part of that's burned on the altar is the memorial piece for God. Catch up if you heard the videos from last week. You can see we were discussing this. Okay, so in this case, it's quite literal, but Reach Nichoach means that God accepts it with favor. In the Mishnah already here, the Mishnah in Zvachim, as elaborated by the Gemara, it actually divides into Reach and Nichoach. So what do you have? Reach bilvad. You have to burn it. It's only meant to generate smoke and a smell, but not it's like, though you're feeding God. What does Makbili point out? In the Gemara, this means that the pieces cannot be pre-roasted. Okay? Get that? You see that note? If you look in the Gemara, Reach bilvad means that you would have thought that take the meat of the korban and somehow roast it or pre-cook it before burning it on the Mizbeach. Why? Well, why would you have such a havamina? I don't know. They could do that on Bama. A Bama doesn't have such requirements. So when they would offer sacrifice to God on the Bama, for example, they could pre-cook or pre-roast the limbs before burning them on the Bama. So that's what the Reach means. And Nichoach means, like the Rambam says here, Nichoach means that it pleases God. So he separates the two. Throughout the Torah, we just read of Reach Nichoach, an aroma that pleases God. But in the Gemara and the Mishnah, they point out Reach is one standard and Nichoach is the next standard. So this note that they brought in the same of the Aruch HaShulchan that's in the Koran doesn't fit with one Makbili says. He says you have to do Reach so that it means, and you're not trying to feed God, so to speak. You're not being too anthropomorphic. But Makbili points out, based on the Gemara, that it actually means that you're not supposed to pre-cook or pre-roast the meat, so that when it goes up on the altar raw, it generates a better smell. That's what it means. So why would you have a havamina to do it? I didn't answer this question. Why would you have a havamina to pre-cook it or pre-roast the meat? Derech eretz. If the meat is consumed on the altar, that's like, so to speak, God's food. Reach nichoach on God's shulchan. The mizbeach is like a shulchan. Havamina derech eretz. How do you serve the king his food? You have to first roast it properly. The best way to cook meat, by the way, the best way to preserve its taste is roasting with a little bit of salt. Right? So you would have had a havamina. Or some menachos, by the way, are first turned into bread and then burned on the altar, as we're going to see. The mincha isn't that just take the flour and oil and burn it as flour. Sometimes you actually turn it into a baked bread and then you burn it, right? So you would have thought also, perhaps, you have a havamina, pre-cook the limbs before burning them on the altar. Kamash malan, you're not supposed to. Your dafka is supposed to have intention to put the pieces of this animal, the legs and everything, directly onto the fires to be burned on the fire and generate a smell there. That's what this mitzvah is. Okay. So my question is, why didn't Uncles translate this? If the Gemara and Mishnah eventually paskin like this, that Reach is one standard. You have to the point of the burning of the meat on raw on the mizbeach, and it will result in nichoach. Why didn't Uncles mention that? I don't know. I would have expected it. Being that this is the halacha, I wonder. Okay, that's my question. Why don't Uncles leave this out? I don't know. Okay, let's start the next paragraph. We have a few seconds. Okay. Okay. Oh, we already said that you could actually have the sacrifices slaughtered by non-kohanim. That's what a zar is. And from the reception of the blood and on, including the reception of the blood, that's what the kohanim have to do. That's the priesthood's commandment. All of the slaughtered sacrifices, the blood has to be received in a sacred vessel, in one of the service vessels, by a kohen. He can't put it down on the ground and let it catch it like that. Let's say it's a big cup. He can't give it to some other Jew to catch. He can't give it to a woman to catch. It has to be a kohen who's dressed as a kohen and fulfilled all the proper requirements of being a serviceable kohen. You know what's different between all the korbanos? All of them in common, a kohen, properly dressed, properly sanctified, catching the blood in the cup. But where he's doing that, that actually makes a difference. Some korbanos are here, some korbanos are there. Ketzad. Kodshei kodashim ein shochatin otan ve'ein mekablin et daman ela b'tzvon hamizbeach. The kodshei kodshim, which means the burnt offering, the olah, the chatas, and the asham, have to be slaughtered on the north side of the altar. Like we said last week and previous weeks, that's a machlokas. What's the north side? Some say it's a line that goes through the altar from east to west, divides the north half of the courtyard from the south half.
Mhm.
And others, like the Rambam, say, no, it's everything beyond the northern boundary of the altar, which is a much smaller area. Everything north of the altar, literally, not just the north half of the altar and beyond. So it's a line that goes west-east from the temple edifice to the eastern gate, and it's shifted more to the north side. It's only the area north of the altar. And the other opinion is that it just cuts basically through the courtyard and across the altar. Okay. So that's considered the north side. You shall slaughter this burnt offering on the northern side of the altar before God. And we already explained to be in this book. The lesser holy sacrifices, including Korban Pesach and Shlamim, where are those slaughtered? A Bechor, where is it slaughtered? Anywhere in the temple courtyard. Okay. How do you know you can always slaughter these holy sacrifices, the most holy ones in the north side? It says, I just said that pasuk. You shall slaughter it on the north side of the altar. Okay. With the chatadu omer, that was talking about the burnt offering. With the chatas, the sin offering, it says, bimkom asher tishachet olah tishachet chatat. In the place where the burnt offering would have been slaughtered, that's where the chatas should be slaughtered. Make sense?
Yeah.
That's what the pasuk says explicitly. It's right there in Leviticus. The place where you slaughter the burnt offering, that's where you slaughter the sin offering. And it said the burnt offering is in the north. Just like the chatas is called kodesh kodashim, it says, so too the burnt offering is called kodesh kodashim, most holy. Uva ashamu omer. What about the guilt offering, which is different than a sin offering? Bimkom asher yishchatu et ha'olah yishchatu et ha'asham. In the place where they would slaughter, in this case it said tishachet ha'olah, means where it's the ha'al instead of the nifal. It's active. The place where they were to slaughter the burnt offering, that's where they are to slaughter the guilt offering. With regard to chatas, it says in the place where the burnt offering would have been slaughtered, passive, that's where the sin offering should be slaughtered. Interesting, right? The comparison, the chatas is compared to the olah passively, and the asham is compared to the olah actively. You look at the ones doing the slaughtering. V'shalmei tzibur hu kshula chatat. Shalmei tzibur. When are they have shalmei tzibur? Only on Shavuos. Shlamim that are brought from the community. Those are the two lambs brought on Shavuos. So those were connected to the sin offering. In what respect? Says you shall make one se'irizim. That's talking about the korban. That's talking about the korban that was offered again on Shavuos. Right? There's a korban Shavuos that's not the musaf. A se'irizim, higot as a sin offering. So it's connected to that. If you're offering this higot, if there's a higot as a sin offering, so the two lambs that come with it should also be slaughtered like they're most holy on the north side. So too these lambs are shlamim but public sacrifice. So those are to be slaughtered like a sin offering. And they are slaughtered in the place where the chatas would be slaughtered, the north side. And by the way, the place where the korban is slaughtered, that's also where the blood should be received. Sounds like kiddush also, by the way. Just like the blood entering the cup, that's a kiddush. So too, Chazal said, "Ain't kiddush ela b'kom suda." You're supposed to say kiddush on Shabbos, where you're going to eat the meal. That's a good way to fit the fitting place to end for this Shabbos. Once again, we close with a prayer that we actually get to put these halachas into practice, and God should enlighten us to keep His Torah full commitment, 100%, without picking and choosing. Have a good night and a good week and a good Shabbos. See you next time.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.